probably Rashad Hill at right tackle. Maybe Brian O'Neill, their second-round pick, can come in and take over that spot. But they've definitely got issues there. Their left side of the line, assuming Nick Easton is fully healthy and playing at a decent level again at left guard, should be all figured out. But right side is still an issue.
And nickel cornerback?
That one's going to be interesting. I don't have a good read on that yet. Hopefully through OTAs we'll start to figure out, is Mike Hughes, is he able to assume that spot? Is he beating out Mackenzie Alexander or Terrence Newman? Newman re-signing is a little bit interesting because I'm not 100% convinced that he has a roster spot in September when final cuts are made.
Interesting.
I don't know. I mean, he has such value when it comes to teaching younger players, and the fact that you drafted a first-round cornerback, I think that increases Newman's value actually to helping that guy out, showing him how to study film. But guys like Xavier Rhodes, who's been around Newman for a long time, he's kind of, you would think he's taken in all the information that he can and applied it, and him being a Pro Bowl cornerback now, all pro cornerback, it shows. But on the field, I'm not sure that Newman's a guy that you want to have to rely on all that much, being 40 years old and being that you have Mackenzie Alexander, Mike Hughes, even Trey Waynes being younger cornerbacks yet. You want to have those guys be around for 5 years and contributing. And if you're constantly going back to, well, our fallback position is Terrence Newman, that doesn't allow those guys to make some mistakes on the field, learn from them, and get better. So I'm going to be really curious to see how that plays out.
Let's talk about the third running back position after I thank Tony Hoaglund, Hoaglund, as I've told you before. Michael Russo and myself both get our car insurance and other forms of insurance through Tony. He works out of Champlin, but you don't have to go to Champlin to work with Tony. We just figured out how to use their app. We should have asked about that earlier, and it just makes everything so easy. You can print stuff out. You can get questions answered. You can check on status. It's just so easy. I'm not the biggest technology guy in the world, but there are forms of technology like that app that just do make life a lot easier.
Hey, Minnesota sports fans. This is your local State Farm agent, Tony Hoaglund. I need you all to ask yourselves this question. If you're in an at-fault car accident and you are sued for $700,000, how much of that $700,000 will my current insurance company pay? If you are unsure or can't answer all $700,000, you need to give us a call. State Farm has been number one in car insurance since World War II and number one in homeowners insurance since 1964. For a no-obligation review of your current policies, call us at 763-421-4900 or check out our website at www.champlininsurance.com.
So who's the third running back?
I don't know. That's the simple answer to it. C.J. Ham maybe could take on some of that role. Mike Boone, who's an undrafted guy, the more that I learn about him, the more I like what they got in him. He's got a lot of the same quick characteristics that Jerick McKinnon had. But ultimately, if you have Dalvin Cook and Latavius Murray, you're probably not going to use that third down back a whole bunch if you don't have a real established guy there. I thought throughout the offseason that maybe they would go get a guy in free agency, and then I thought, okay, maybe a mid-round pick. There were a couple guys in there that had McKinnon-type qualities that I thought would be of value in the fifth round or so. But ultimately, they waited till after the draft to sign a couple of undrafted guys, Rock Thomas being among them. So I don't know. I mean, it could be Mike Boone. It could be Rock Thomas. It could be C.J. Ham. Or it could just be basically, here's your Dalvin Cook and Latavius Murray show and ride that one.
My guess is Boone. The way they love the young, untapped athletic talent at all positions, I think Boone will end up winning that thing. That's my guess today.
He is very quick, and I think he still can get better in the receiving game. The thing that I really liked about watching some of his college tape was every time he gets in traffic, he's covering the ball with two hands. And, that's something we didn't see very often from Adrian Peterson. So despite the quickness and wanting to turn things into 20-yard gains all the time, he's very cognizant of traffic around him and covering up the ball, and still can break tackles despite, not giving stiff arms and things like that. So I think he's got a real shot to make the 53-man roster. I mean, it's all going to depend on how his preseason plays out, but I like some of the things I've seen from him.
Stefon Diggs still hasn't had a 1,000-yard season yet. But does he rank in the top 100 players in the NFL?
According to NFL Network and their surveying of players, he is number 65 on that list. So it's the first time he's cracked the top 100 players of 2018. So this is basically, an end-of-season survey where they survey the players around the NFL, and then they talk to them about some of the guys that made it. So I thought it was, it was kind of interesting. And one of the funny stories was Jarvis Landry, when the Vikings were playing the Saints. He was traveling back to Miami, I'm assuming from the West Coast, and he had a layover at the New Orleans airport during the Vikings game against New Orleans. And so they talked to him about Diggs' catch and what it was like there. And he said it was just the whole air came out of the whole airport. Everybody sitting around watching that on the TV. So, the lists that are done in the off season are overdone for sure, but there are some entertaining stories that come out of them. Jason Kelce talked about, in the last couple minutes when the Vikings were playing the Saints, just assuming that they were going to end up playing the Saints and realizing, okay, well, I guess we got to kind of rethink things here and go against the Vikings. So, it's interesting. Kirk Cousins has come out now and said, hey, next year you'll be top 50 to Stefon Diggs. So, it's going to be an interesting year for Diggs because he's been so close to that 1,000-yard mark the last couple of years, hasn't got there, and now he's in a contract year. And I still think he could be the toughest one of the three big guys that they have left to give contract extensions to, just because, you've got Thielen, and Diggs is probably going to command a lot of money on the free agent market just because receivers really often do. And I'm not sure the Vikings are going to be willing to pony up what it would cost. And if they do, then you're basically paying Diggs twice what you're paying Thielen. So that's a really hard thing to balance as a front office.
Absolutely. How many top 100 players do you think the Vikings actually have?
Well, they could end up with 5 or 6 from this survey that was done. I mean, so far, you had Diggs at 65, Linval Joseph at 83, and even Kirk Cousins at 94. Quarterbacks tend to get pushed up, and usually you'll have 3 or 4 in the top 10. With Cousins at 94, that one kind of surprised me that he was that low. And Joseph surprised me a little bit, but it's a position that so many people don't pay a lot of attention to. I mean, just because you're an NFL player doesn't mean that you're paying attention to line play. No. There's a lot of...
I used to collect Pro Bowl votes from players, and often they had no idea what was going on around the league.
No, and I remember a few years ago, Sharif Floyd, I was talking to him, and they were going to play the Seahawks, and I don't remember. So Thomas Rawls was going to be moving into a starting role because of injury. He had no idea who Thomas Rawls was, and this was like Wednesday of the game before the Seahawks. So, yeah, I think he might have known the number, but the name just didn't register with him. He even, he gave me a who? And I go, well, the guy that's going to be starting.
I still remember Tony Dungy back in like 93, 92. No, it must have been 92, showing me a game plan about facing the 49ers. Yep. And it was, watch out for number 80. He's very quick. He runs very well after the catch. He didn't even put Jerry Rice's name down because he just wanted to keep it as simple as possible for, everybody. These guys are not always necessarily students of anything that they don't have to be students of.
Yeah, and so, when they're watching tape, it is all about the numbers. Yeah. So there is a lot of that, and you'll hear that even from some of the players. Most of them know the big name guys,
right.
The running backs, the receivers, the tight ends. But, I think when it does come to defensive players or sometimes the linemen, it's about numbers and not about names or name recognition. So I've always been kind of fascinated by the fact that a lot of fans know names more than the players in the locker room.
Let's guess. Let's do our first stupid prediction segment for a while.
Yep.
I can't wait to do it because it's my favorite segment on any of the podcasts. Do want to say if you'd like to advertise with this podcast, we have a large listenership. This is the most popular show on the network. We also have a large social media presence, so you will get social media mentions. You will get social media impressions that are a very large number. You also reach a lot of dedicated listeners, and unlike traditional radio, actually know how many people are listening. It's not some weird extrapolated made-up number. So email me at jsouhan47@gmail.com if you'd like to sponsor the show. I would, stupid prediction of the day, if I had to pick what the Vikings would be today, I think I'd say 11-5.
That's exactly
and
where
you know
I
what?
was going.
I think I've said that the last 4 years.
Yeah, no, I don't. I don't think I've had 11-5 before, but I think I had 10-6 3 years ago. But the over/under, I believe, is at 10 wins for them right now, and I think they are a better team than they were last year. But I think they have a tougher schedule than they did last year.
Exactly.
And so
agreed on both points.
Yeah. So 13-3. It would take a lot for me to start predicting 13-3 for any team, just because it's you look at schedules and who you're playing on the road. Their road schedule is really tough. But they're now CG technology, which is kind of an aid for gamblers going out looking at the analytics and setting lines for each game throughout the year. They've got the Vikings going 8-0 at home, and I wouldn't be so surprised if that happened. But their road schedule, if they go 8-0 at home, they could win 3 on the road and still easily win the division and get in the playoffs. To me, this year is more about proving your toughness on the road and going after the number 1 seed in the conference when the playoffs start, so you don't have to go to Philadelphia, so that you can have the home field advantage that U.S. Bank Stadium has really provided for this team.
Absolutely. Let's see.
Underdogs in 3 of their first 5 games, by the way.
That's the interesting thing, is that I think there are some soft stretches in the schedule. If they survive early, they should be fine, but there's no guarantee. There's no guarantee you survive early.
Yep. So here are their underdog games in the first 5. 2.5-point dogs at Green Bay. I can't really dispute that. Given that usually the home team, you figure 3 points. So I get it. I can see the Vikings being 2.5 dogs there. 3-point underdogs at the Rams. That one I'm kind of curious about, because the Rams, the way that the Vikings handled the Rams last year, I don't think they were as good as some people thought last year, but they have done a lot this offseason to upgrade.
And I'll also point out that if I'm blanking on his name, if that receiver doesn't fumble at the goal line, that game could have gone a different way.
Yeah, very true. 3.5-point underdogs at Philadelphia. And then later in the season, 4.5 underdogs at New England, which I can't really disagree with any of those lines. If I had to say one of them where I would probably take the Vikings, I would say at the Rams, maybe at Green Bay as well. But 3.5 at Philly and 5.5 at New England, I don't think I would touch those.
No, agreed with you. Bud Grant is having a garage sale.
Starts today.
It's very quaint. It's funny. It's a great thing to talk about and write about. And it's also absolutely rooted in the fact that Bud made as much money as he thought he should have during his career.
Yeah, that's probably true. And he, it's funny now. I went to the garage sale. I've been there twice in the last 5 years, I think. And every time I've gone there, I can't believe some of the prices on the items.
Mm-hmm.
And you see Bud is charging for autographs.
Mm-hmm.
And he's even come out now and basically said, hey, if you see something that you think is too expensive, don't buy it. He's like, I'm not negotiating on this stuff. And I've never bought into this. Hey, it could be the last year of the